Well, first of all, it's good to meet you and have an opportunity. It just stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. We better get going while we can.
Yeah.
Your roots are down in southern Illinois in the Mount Vernon Cesar area, and I want to start back in those days, Dr. Inglett. How did you, very early in life, start to get an appreciation for the natural world?
It was very easy because we moved from various mining town to mining town in southern Illinois. Since my dad was a coal miner, then I had the opportunity to see the mines up close, the slag, the chemicals going into the mine, the calcium carbide, as well as the plants and animals that were in the various areas. My grandfather had a farm, and I also used to spend summers on his farm. So I would go around the farm with him, and I could see the corn growing, the soybeans, and the potatoes. And he had a complete farm with chickens and horses and cows and pigs, you know. It was very, very exciting. So all these were very fascinating things to a young boy.
And, of course, that made all the difference in the world back in the Great Depression, too. A lot of the farm families lived a lot better, you know, with being able to be more self-sustaining and all that.
Yes, it wasn't for my grandfather, grandmother helping us out, I don't think we could ever survive the Great Depression, because they were able to provide food when the mines, of course, were many times closed because of explosion or cave-in or fires or many times strike also.
You told me just a little earlier that you were really interested in the violin early in life, but what was the sort of door that opened, or the significant thing that got you interested in chemistry?
Basically, it was the high school chemistry or science class, and the teacher, Mr. E.L. Brock in the Mount Vernon Township High School, apparently found that I was quite interested in the chemistry. So he allowed me to be the chemistry assistant, starting practically every year I was in high school. So I had complete access to the KIP generators, which generated hydrogen sulfide, as well as the other chemicals. And then it was at the completion of World War II, and so a lot of surplus chemicals became available. So I started my own laboratory. So half of my bedroom consisted of chemicals. So I decided to start my own laboratory, and so we started, I made a big sign and put it up on the telephone pole. It was Inglett Research Laboratories. So I actually had some labels printed for some cosmetics. I made some cold cream and some other creams, put it in bottles, and found a few drugstores that would put it on the shelf. So, unfortunately, it wasn't a big seller. The bottles weren't very attractive, but my high school math teacher did buy some. That was my early career. And then from there, it was the end of World War II, so I went into summer school and got a job, a meal job, and job cleaning and doing odd jobs, basically, when it was much cheaper to go to college in those days. Had a room with 4 other fellows, and so worked my way from job to job, meal job all the time. So I was able to, with the influx of the World War II veterans that had the GI Bill, there are plenty of jobs available. So I was able to complete my college in 3 years. And then from there I got research assistantships at the University of Iowa, where a professor had some money from Procter & Gamble. And so that paid enough money to live better. So then I was able to complete my Doctor of Philosophy degree in biochemistry in 3 years, and that's started me on my career.
What were the scientific challenges that excited you at that stage in your career?
Well, I found that the chemistry was always exciting. And even as an undergraduate, I could sit in on graduate courses in organic chemistry and other chemistry courses. And then my last year, Professor Smith gave me a fellowship from his chemical company, and I did actual research for a senior thesis, which resulted in a publication, a scientific publication, an absolute finding of a new chemical nitrogen heterocyclic ring system, which for a young kid about 19 years old was very, very exciting to be in the world of absolute new chemical structures and identity. So this really was an exciting time.
How did you make the transition to working in food products and sweeteners and the like? And where did that take place? Did that take place here at INCAR originally, or where did that take place?
No. My early career started as a public health service officer because this was necessary. I was assigned as an officer because it was the time of the Korean War. So it started out, I was actually in cancer research at the National Institutes of Health. And then I married my wife when I finished after my PhD. I had $200 and I bought myself a four-door Chrysler, 1941, with fluid drive, and so that enabled me to meet this young lady at a wedding of one of my friends. So we married in 1952, and then she came with me when I was appointed an officer in the Public Health Service. And then from there, we had a son, and we decided that we needed a little more money. So I entered the world, the industrial world in Chicago, Illinois. There are various industrial companies there. I moved up fairly rapidly in the corporate world, particularly at International Minerals and Chemical Corporation, where I became middle manager of research. And in this job, I had to set up an international natural product screening program, which took me in the darkest parts of Africa and Asia and getting these natural products for screening. And actually, we were looking for many activities, of which sweeteners were one of them. Because at that time, cyclamate and saccharin were on the blacklist, basically, and so we were looking for a replacement, an intense sweetener that would replace them. So about this time, other sweeteners came into the marketplace, particularly aspartame, which was an excellent sweetener, and therefore the industrial world of my research was no longer actually needed. So that's when I made the transition down to the Peoria laboratory. So I came down here actually as a leader of research, involving some 60 or more scientists leading many different areas in the agricultural science area.
What is INCAR's role here in the Department of Agriculture?
Our role is one of the leading centers for utilization research. Utilization research is the application, finding new uses for agricultural products, as well as byproducts and bio-based products, and as well as all the ramifications of crops and how they react to or in the marketplace.
And in particular, what was your thrust here? Where did you first start to work on products from, let's say, oats and soybeans, corn and the like, to try to make for better nutritional products for people?
Basically, this started in the mid-'80s when I took a small group and was conducting research on basic aspects of enzymes and their reaction on various starches. This was based on the fact that the biotechnology at that time had gone very far beyond the chemistry. So I was trying to bring the chemistry up to the biotechnology edge with respect to heat-stable enzymes that degrade starches. So in this process, I found some nice white powders when I worked on oats. And about this time, my wife had suffered a near-fatal heart attack. So the doctor suggested she lose weight. So in the process of taking care of my wife and the home situation, I looked at my research and said, you know, these things might be useful for reducing calories and making better health. So this first product was called Oat Trim. Oat Trim because it was a fat replacer. We could put it in food products and replace some of the fat. Therefore, the food would have fewer calories in it. And basically, by applying the concept of fewer calories, cutting out the fat, my wife and I both lost a considerable amount of weight. She cut her weight actually in half. I lost 50 pounds down to my college weight. And so that was in 1988. And so today we still maintain these weight levels based on the fact that fewer calories, and of course the heaviest calories in the diet are those coming from fat. So by cutting the fat, we can reduce the calories. So that was the beginning of what we call the trim technologies. Trim is to trim the fat and basically the excess body weight to a more healthy level.
How has, let me ask this, it went from oat trim to soy trim and beyond. How did you work that out through the other different plant species?
Well, we used all of the plant species, and wherever it was, we found in the oats and the barley a high level of what we call soluble fiber. Soluble fiber has the name of beta-glucan from those particular varieties, from those particular grains. And so it's known in the literature, the nutritional literature and so forth, that if you eat a certain level of beta-glucan in your diet, or the soluble fiber, the FDA will allow a health claim. That is, it will reduce heart disease in a diet of low fat and low salt. So that became a very important item. Since oat trim was an enzyme converted product, in the beginning it was not allowed a health claim. So that's when I invented Nutrim, which was a product that did have a health claim, and it had double the level of beta-glucan, which makes it a more nutritious item, as well as cutting calories. And in the research, we could also include soy trim, rice trim in that particular patent or technology. Then from that technology, we found that there's a considerable waste of oat hulls, soy hulls, and corn hulls. So we started some research to find something useful from those byproducts or waste products from the farm. So that's when we came up with the Z trim. Z in that particular case meant 0 calories. So we had a fiber gel that could replace carbohydrates and fats, and because it had very high viscosity and it could be used. So that one followed as one of the trim technologies. And more recently now, we have one called calorie trim. This is where we've built the soluble fiber component, what we call beta-glucan, up to 30, even 50% level, which means that we can now make a very nutritious food item with much lower calories and a much more healthy food than we ever could before. So now we can use this particular C trim, I call it, or a calorie trim, into food products that ordinarily would not even be associated with the soluble fiber beta-glucan. So we can have it in trail mix, we can have it in chocolates, we can have it in yogurt, many different products and smoothies that you would never even expect to have a healthy component.
In all of this, I suppose, another aspect of this is it may be great for you, but if it doesn't taste good, people won't want it. How do you work on the taste aspect of this?
Well, that's why the level of beta-glucan and soluble fiber is very important, because we really do not have to include that much anymore to get the level of beta-glucan that's going to be helpful in the diet. So actually these particular components, the C-trim, it doesn't influence the texture or the flavor of most of the products that we've had it in, including smoothies and chocolate and other things. It just seems the flavor blends in very well.
Back to oat trim and some of the earlier ones. How has private industry taken those products and put them into the food chain? Where would, if I went to the supermarket, where would I find them?
That would be, you would probably never know unless it's labeled good for your heart, because the oat trim many times was not labeled oat trim. It was called hydrolyzed oat flour or something. If you have that listed with many other ingredients, you would never know what's actually there. So in the case of oat trim, we had 3 large companies that licensed the technology, and they manufactured it in big quantities and shipped it out to many food manufacturers, because as you know, most of our food nowadays is in the case of convenience foods and foods that are generally not prepared at home like they were in the early days, where everything was done on the farm and in the house, where the cooking was done largely at home. So you don't find it in the grocery store along with the oil, the sugar, and the salt and so forth. It's the manufacturing companies that incorporate it into the different food products.
So it's already there, you don't know it, but you wouldn't know.
Most of the time you wouldn't know that it's there, unless you're buying products that are called low fat or good for your heart, or basically some health claim related to that food.
If I see something that says heart healthy or something like that, it's a grain product, a bread or something,
it could have it in there, or it could have another oat substance like a flour or a grain, or whole grain products are very popular today.
Let's talk about, before we started rolling tape, we talked about some of the fun that comes from doing this. In the scientific process, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of satisfaction from being out there on the front edge of things. Tell me a little bit about some of the joy that you get out of doing what you do.
Basically, it comes from the mind. Your mind has to be challenged in the different aspects of nature, society, chemical changes, or the things that are going on around you. So if you are challenged, you enjoy the challenge and the change, particularly in this case where we're relating to chemistry and the changes that take place in terms of the different chemical entities and what we're dealing with. Then the joy is finding something new and exciting. This is challenging, because a lot of people have done a lot of different things. So if you can find a way to do something that's new, novel, different, and useful. The word useful is very important, because many times you can find something that's new and different, but to find something that's new, different, challenging, and useful, this puts it in a little different league than just doing something like the early days when I was in college and found a new nitrogen heterocyclic ring system, which was exciting. But the utility was missing in those days. But now with the trim technologies, we have not only changes, and this has gone way beyond, because we're not only dealing with the laboratory, we're dealing with plants and the licensee of these technologies, and you actually can relate to the manufacture of these things. Being in a industrial plant where you carry out things in 600-gallon tanks instead of a 600 milliliter beaker is quite a contrast, and it's very challenging. So this is another dimension beyond other just the excitement of finding something new, novel, and something that's creative and something that's useful. This is another dimension to the whole picture, and it comes into play in the trim technologies.
What about the knowledge that you're actually in the long run helping to have people live longer, healthier lives?
This is the utility that's most gratifying, is the fact that you can do something that's helping humanity. And particularly as we all grow older, you generally don't conceive of health problems or anything else, which is one of the problems we face, is the fact that people, even when they're younger, should have a better understanding of their health and what they eat, how much they eat, which generally is not taught in school. And generally there isn't enough guidance in the world. It's only after people have smoked and eaten a lot of fatty foods for many years that they discover, see, I've got a problem. And then it's a bit late in life, sometimes too late. So it's unfortunate whenever we have a problem in this country where we spent $97 billion just on obesity problems. You couple that with all the heart problems and so forth and so on. Something needs to be done. More education, nutritional education. People need to be more aware of it earlier in life, that if they don't do something, it's not only going to ruin their lives, it's very likely to ruin the government systems such as Medicare and the health care system. So it's a serious problem. So to be able to say that we have some tools here, the trim technology, that can be useful for humanity, this is important. And this is what I mean by doing something beyond the creativity, something beyond the excitement, something that's going to go out there into the world and be useful and applied. And fortunately, all these technologies we're talking about are licensed to industrial companies, very excellent companies that have foresight and realize that this is a growing market. Much of this market is growing at 10, 20 or more % per year. So, but there needs to be a better understanding by in the marketplace of this type of food, and this type of food is available.
How does it feel to have been really one of the people on the cutting edge of all that?
Well, basically, there is great gratification, satisfaction in being able to do something useful, but also it isn't the sort of thing you can predict. It's the sort of thing that comes together, and it results from many years of trial and error, success and failure, disappointments and success. So you can't really predict. When I get up in the morning and say, I'm going to invent something today, that is illogical. If I'm going to get up today and go to work and do some exciting experiments, this is realistic. So the realistic point is that I'm very fortunate to be able to come many forks in the road, take the right fork in the road to go to the right place. So it's sort of what we call research. If we really knew how we were going to get there and what we were going to get, it wouldn't be research. So the exciting part is actually doing the research and having something actually useful come out of it.
Yeah. I think I'm getting pretty much to the end of my questions in here. Is there anything that I haven't touched upon, George, that you'd like to bring up? Because you've said many good things there. I know I've got more than enough material.
Well, I've tried to cover my wife. Unfortunately, I lost my 2 children.
Well, as I say, you've got something here that in the long run, as the companies put it more back out into the marketplace, over the long haul, we'll all be the better for it. I mean, it's got to feel pretty darn good.
Yeah. Well, you're in position to be able to bring this to the frontier of people. PBS should be a nice spot for intellectual people that are capable of learning things, So hopefully you'll get to an audience where we can make some change.